We're back? Does it look like we're back? It looks like we're back, except I don't have an extra mouse right now, so we're not fully back. But I installed Manjaro on here, and because I installed Manjaro on here, CS works again. So I can play CS again, whereas before, when I was running Lubuntu still with the lightest weight desktop that I could, um, it still wouldn't work. It worked briefly for whatever reason. There was a time when it worked. I don't know what changed. I guess something internally in Linux messed up, or maybe I had too much on the hard drive, but for whatever reason it stopped working one day and I was really upset. Like I think I almost cried just because CS wasn't working. And that was like the late summer of uh of 2019 because I just wanted to play on the computer in the dark all the time. There we go. Dead bot. Well, now I'm dead. I'm having to play with the pad here because again, I don't have an extra mouse. So I'll have to figure out where the mouse went. But it's an amazing feeling. It's back. CS is back. All of a sudden I can play CS again. What the hell? I should have moved to Manjaro a long time ago. The reason why I didn't want to was because there was a lot of stuff on my computer I was afraid of losing, but eventually I just said screw it, and now I don't care. I had I had a bunch of old videos from YouTubers who deleted stuff, and I was the only one who had it. Um, and maybe you'll listen to this and go, "Oh, Star, how dare you betray your need to archive everything?" It's kind of like, yeah, I did, but the amount of money and effort it would take to buy an external hard drive and to put in the effort of oh shit, put in the effort of getting things going that way, it wasn't worth it when I literally just wanted to be able to use this computer in a more functional way immediately. And getting rid of Amazon spyware by changing distros seemed to be the optimal way of doing that. And so we're Manjaro gang now. I'm really happy with how well this runs. Like this game runs much better than it did on uh on Ubuntu, or Lubuntu, I guess I should say. But yeah, it runs better, and it's doing cool stuff. And I'm in uh 2014 YouTube again. That's what we're doing now. Or going back to the era when every single human being in existence used CS:GO footage for their YouTube videos. Um, I don't know. It feels really good to play it again because this was a game that I played all the time while I was listening to podcasts. Like I I didn't I didn't clock in nearly as much time as other people did. Like I only played it for like 22 hours over the course of that summer, alongside TF2, which I clocked in a similar amount of time in. So overall, not that much time. I played other PC games more, or like cumulatively, I played PC games in general for a lot of time over that summer. Um, not one in particular. So I guess I'm dishonest in saying that I played this one all the time. But you know, you get the idea. It was a fundamental part of that time. And because I've been getting so nostalgic for that, by the way, you should watch my video Brain Fog is Good Actually, because I talk about the feeling of bliss that I associated with 2019. And um, I kept calling it brain fog in the video for some reason, even though I wasn't trying to describe brain fog. Brain fog is more like what I've been experiencing now, which is just this malaise that makes it so hard to do anything because, like, you get so depressed you can't properly think or enjoy anything, or finishing sentences is harder, having thoughts is harder. That's brain fog. That's real brain fog. Um, but what I was describing was just bliss. And I guess I kept putting it in those terms because the feeling of bliss I was describing had so much to do with isolation and, like, like waking up at random times and always having the windows blacked out and not really being very active outside of pacing in my room and so on. Um, it was a different kind of feel. It's a different kind of feel to what you might what like there was a disconnect between what I was describing and the terms I was using to describe it. But there was a logical reason for why I was choosing to describe it in those terms. It's because the cultural understanding of, like, the environment that I was in, the setting I was in that was producing those experiences would have been malaise. It would have been negative. And so I was using negative terms to describe something positive when really what I should have been doing was trying to explain the euphoria and the sleepiness of everything. Um, but how that sleepiness was set in this immense sense of relaxation, and how that sense of relaxation um, colored all of the activities that I was doing, even when some of them were more laborious, like thinking really hard about what the next video would be, or considering, you know, uh, the answers to a philosophical dialogue I had in my head related to some live stream I was listening to, um, probably while playing CS or some other game. Things like this. It was a time period that had a lot going on internally in a good way, but not a lot going on externally, also in a good way, but not to other people. To other people, they assume that it's completely negative. It's like a bad thing. It wasn't for me. It just added to the overall sense of immersion and, um, yeah, really just immersion. It was just immersion in the escapism of what I was doing. Like, there was not a world around me. There was just the media that I was interfacing with, my relationship to it. And that was a really special feeling that I described in that video, Brain Fog is Good, actually. So if you haven't seen that video, I'd recommend watching it, because even though I ramble on a bit, and that was back when my psychiatrist labeled me as a schizophrenic, which I'm not a schizophrenic, but that was back then. My psychiatrist had labeled me as a schizophrenic just so they could push medicines on me. Um, I had another psychiatrist who suggested, they didn't have proof for it, but they suggested that I might have schizoaffective disorder when I was like 16. And so when that psychiatrist told me I was schizophrenic, I was just quick to believe them. Even though they didn't really have much evidence for it, they just kind of said it and then immediately put me on Invega and Seroquel. It's funny, that specific psychiatrist had a business card for Invega on their desk, And they also immediately recommended that I get injected it. They recommended that I get on it before I even said much of anything. I wasn't even through finishing describing my symptoms, and they just immediately said I should get on Invega, and they had bottles and bottles of it um, in their desk. Like they opened up their desk drawer and there were just tons and tons of things of Invega in there. Then the business card was on their desk. They kept going on and on about Invega injections and how great they are. I really got the sense from this lady that she was getting paid by whoever manufactured that drug. That's how it felt to me. It felt like she was getting paid by somebody for how much she, advocated over the moon about it. It was very bizarre, and like her demeanor and way of speaking and of describing things was somewhat inhuman. Like she was hyped up like she was on Adderall, um, and but like a high dose of Adderall. And there was something completely inhuman about the way that she was describing things. It was all very fluffy and overly positive. It just did not feel like a human being. It felt like someone actively putting on a front to sell you something, which of course made it even more uncomfortable when you consider just how hard she was pushing that specific pill on me. Before I again even finished anything I had to say, it was like you go in the door, boom, in Vega, better get on it. Business cards there, you got a bunch of it right there to give to you. It's like it's weird. It was weird. Um, and so, she put me on that medicine and then Seroquel at the time. And I was like, well, I guess if my doctor says I'm schizophrenic, I must be schizophrenic, which of course, my symptoms are not anywhere near severe enough to be labeled that. But I was led to believe that that was the case because of bad health people. Um, yeah, people. This game is really hard to play with one hand and with the pad on the keyboard. This is actually a terrible idea. But I need footage in the background that's comfy, and I wanted to demonstrate a point. I wanted to demonstrate the excitement of having installed Manjaro, and being able to finally play this game again because this is the only computer that I can play it on. But shit. Okay, am I killing him? No, no. Is he? Wow. Okay. That was like that should have been easy. See, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So the psychosis symptoms that I've presented have been mood congruent. So the diagnosis they gave me was persistent depressive disorder with mood congruent psychotic symptoms. So they're in relation to the depression, not existing on their own. So if I'm really, really suicidal, for example, and I'm having, worsened depressive symptoms, then psychosis is more likely to come about as a result of that. Taking CBD tends to help a lot for me. Is that CBD is a naturally occurring antipsychotic. It provides antipsychotic effects without without all of the nasty stuff that actual antipsychotics have, like brain shrinkage, brain damage, these things. Just really, really nasty things that antipsychotics do to your brain, as well as being associated with a lower chance of recovery, and at least those with schizophrenia, statistically speaking, they're associated with a lower chance of a good health outcome versus people who, did things like therapy, um, which is incredibly concerning. It's kind of like, you're put on these medicines and then it's prolonging the issue, worsening it, which kind of makes sense when you consider the brain shrinkage and the brain damage that they cause. But like the scariness of those pharmaceutical products aside, CBD has been, it's kind of amazing. Like if you just take tons and tons of CBD, as I have, uh, it it can be a wonderful reliever of psychotic symptoms as well as anxiety and other things. But you have to take a lot of it. That's the thing. Like you can't you can't just take, like, in my opinion, those oil bottles that like you get at the store of like a, CBD oil bottle, like they're essentially useless. That you have to take significantly more than whatever you would get there, at least in my case. Um, I have no evidence for this, but I believe kratom has helped with this problem as well. I saw one study in mice that suggested that kratom had antipsychotic effects, but the study also said something along the lines of like, we don't know if this same effect is occurring in humans. So it was kind of inconclusive. But as far as my symptoms are, kratom and CBD seem to be doing the job, whereas other medicines have not, or at least have not without severe side effects like anhedonia and homicidal thoughts. Risperidone and haloperidol, or haloperidol, I think it's how it's said. Um, I almost called it haloperidone, which is just palperidone or Invega again, which I also took. But yeah, haloperidol and risperidone, um, like those medicines just made me desperately, desperately want to kill people, like all the time. Like I was obsessively thinking about wanting to kill people. And it was really unpleasant looking back. There are also massive gaps in my memory from the time that I took those medicines. I don't know what that's about. Antipsychotics in general, a lot of the ones I took, I noticed gaps in my memory. Um, but and maybe it's the brain damage stuff. I have no idea. Anything I would say on that would be from a soothed perspective, so I don't know. But yeah, like it was like I was describing in my video Kirino Mosaic.wave, something something before Mossad agent. I don't remember the title of the video, but that video, like I think I described how like in 2018 there was a period where I was on these antipsychotic medicines and I just really wanted to kill people all the time. And like I was unable to enjoy anything while at the same time experiencing this immense like psychic pain. Like all the time, just so much pain in me on a psychic level. Um, and like being unable to like focus on anything or like stick to one thing, zero enjoyment whatsoever. There was enjoyment in nothing basically. And I developed this fascination with dismembering the bodies of other people and brutally murdering them. So that was fun. Antipsychotics, great medicines, great medicines that everyone should take. That's the conclusion from this. If you want to be more based, take antipsychotics. If you want brain damage, take antipsychotics. Great idea. Um, so, yeah, I've been on a lot of psychiatric medicine. Like, it's weird because most of that medicine I took when I was like 16 years old. And I wonder, like, what are the long-term effects that had? Because, your brain is still developing at that age. I think there's like a couple percentage points that 16 is separated from 18, that in terms of brain development, like there's a couple percentage points there that are apart. Don't quote me on that. Um, so I wonder, like, what long-term effect did that have, if any? I mean, when I was like 8 years old, I took Strattera because I think the doctors just thought Strattera would shut me up because I went to them for anger problems, and I was also prescribed Adderall around that time. I was prescribed Lamictal around that time. Which an interesting thing about that, The theory was if I took Lamictal when I was like 8, um, it would it like as a baby, I was getting thousands of milligrams of extended release Lamictal through just like my mom consuming it orally every day for her seizures, um, which she does not get seizures naturally. She had brain damage. She had a traumatic brain injury that led to her getting seizures. And so she's had to take these various these various medicines to treat them, one of which is also used as a mood stabilizer in bipolar people, which is Lamictal. But she took it at a much, much higher dose, like way higher than bipolar people would take, because again, she was taking it for epilepsy. And I wonder, like, the entire time I was breastfeeding, and the entire time that I was in the body, I was getting pumped with these, thousands of milligrams of Lamictal. And I wonder, did that have an effect on how I think and like my brain development? Surely it did, because like you're not supposed to take that medicine while pregnant anymore. I guess back then they just didn't know that you couldn't do that, so they didn't issue the warning, because my mom certainly didn't stop taking it. But now, as far as I know, you're not allowed to take it if you're pregnant anymore. So they must have collectively figured out, hey, this is kind of a bad thing for the development of a child, right? So what effect did that have on me? I gotta wonder, is that part of the reason why I had tachycardia, for example, when I came out of the womb? I mean, you could probably chalk that up to the fact that I was an early baby. They had to cut me out of my mom. They literally had to cut me out. I was surgically removed from the womb, like, I don't remember how many weeks early it was. It was like several weeks early, because they were worried that I was going to choke myself to death on an umbilical cord, that I just kept jumping around so much in the womb that it was a concern that I would choke myself to death because I kept putting the umbilical cord around my neck like a noose. And so they had to get me out early. And the thinking was that, well, the reason why I developed tachycardia was because I was born too early. It makes sense to me, but I wonder, was this mood stabilizer epilepsy medication also a factor in that? I mean, we don't really know. I don't really know if we have even a way of knowing at this time. Like, there's so many heated debates about medicines that have been used for decades, sometimes hundreds of years, that we still haven't figured out everything we can know about them. And we still don't agree on some fundamental things about them. So, what's stopping something like that from having a long-term, unattended, or just unknown effect on me, someone who was nursing on it? I don't know. Maybe it changed me in some psychological way that we just can't determine. But, point being, um, I got on the medicine again when I was 8, and it didn't really do anything for me besides worsen my already existing anger problems. I tried taking it again at 16. Similar story. It just, made me angry. It didn't really help with anything. I didn't notice that much of a difference. And so, the theory that I just like developed wrong and needed to make up for that, which was really just like a theory between my parents. I think doctors found it interesting, but they didn't really say much about it at the time. They just sort of put me on the medicine, I think, to shut them up, which is a common practice in America. Like, doctors will just throw medicine at you, in my experience. Like, it feels like they don't even care. They don't do that much thorough research into your personal history. They just kind of prescribe stuff. And so it was really easy to get prescribed a lot of different medicines very quickly. So they would just have a suggestion for a medicine that they thought I should be taking, my parents, and then the doctor would put me on it. And that was the case with Lamictal. Um, but again, like I said, both times it didn't work. Not for its intended purpose. But I wonder if it did have some kind of effect. I wonder if the other medicines I had been put on, as my brain was developing, either, before age 10, like I had described, and after into my mid to later teenage years, like, what effect did those have on my brain going forward? I really don't know. And all of a sudden, this has become a discussion about the pharmacological and neurological, psychological implications of um, my childhood. So I think this is a good point to end the video. CS:GO is a cool game.